I want to talk quickly about setting up crash protection. So if I click on this protection button, I can say, and I have on my server, I've said, if I ever have 15 requests running over a period of 5 seconds, send me an email. So you tell it, if I have 15 requests running for 5 seconds, send me an email. Remember, we looked at my metrics, web metrics, and I didn't usually have more than a couple requests running. Here there's one request running, the light green. But on your server, if we go back to this demo server, there was 1 or 2 requests running all the time. Well, if this server ever got up to 5 or 10 or 15, we'd want to know about it. And that's what that alert's about. And it just sends you an email. And there's other things about configuring it. There's more about that in the online documentation. I want to go ahead and move on from this and talk about a couple things. I mentioned the logs. You don't want to miss it. There's tremendous logs. You can see logs inside of FusionReactor. If you go to this FusionReactor button and choose logs, you can see the most recent 128K worth of logs. Not all of the logs, but here's the resource log. And this basically tracks everything that's in that metrics, web metrics. It tracks memory, CPU, request activity, and database activity. And these logs are also stored in the file system where ColdFusion and FusionReactor are installed. And I could look back at this over hours, days, weeks, and by default up to 30 days. Now you might wonder when you look at these logs, well, how am I supposed to know what these columns are? Well, you go to FusionReactor Help. And that takes you to a new page, which is the FusionReactor Online Help. And in a moment, we'll see on the left the various guides in the FusionReactor documentation. There's an installation guide, a user guide, monitoring queries, troubleshooting server problems, using the protection features, and on and on and on. Good stuff. Well, if I look at the user guide, here's logging, and here's overview of FusionReactor logs. And here are all the logs that are in the FusionReactor display, in the FusionReactor logs, and I happen to be looking just then at the resource log. That's a really valuable log to look at. And there's the help for the resource log, and it tells me what each column is, what its relative number is. If I import it into Excel, I can see what the number would be in Excel, and then a description. And by the way, speaking of Excel, if you want to, if you just come in here and type Excel in the help of FusionReactor, it takes you to a page which talks about importing FusionReactor logs into Excel or OpenOffice Calc. And it's very simple, 8 steps. And you could pull one of these logs in and bam, you can do a graph of your own. So it may be something that happened hours ago or days ago or before a crash. So that's great. All right. I think that's there. One more thing I want to show you. On this server, we can see it if I go to user experience. User experience. This is another feature added in FusionReactor 5, I believe it was, where FusionReactor by default has always tracked this red part, which is how long is a request running in the database, and the blue part, which is what's the total request time, and of that, the database is a subset. But then, what about the network time, sending the request down to the client? And then what about the browser render time? Well, we didn't have that in FusionReactor, but now you can. It's called User Experience Monitoring. And when you add just a single line of code to your ColdFusion pages, it sends JavaScript down to the browser. When the browser executes it, it sends a response back to the server, and then it allows it to track things like this. So we can see how much time is spent sending stuff down over the network, how much time is spent rendering pages in the browser. And not only in aggregate like this, but also if I look at the requests, I'll pick slow requests because they live a little bit longer. And I'll look at a recent slow request and look at the details. And I don't look as often at this user experience time. I can't find it right now, but there is some place in here where it's tracked as a column. I don't see it in there. And I'm sorry, I just at the moment can't remember where that is. But the point is you can see how much time is being spent in the sending the data down to the network. And let me just tell you, you're going to want to learn more about that if that interested you. I'm going to collapse this user guide. And there's a whole guide to it called User Experience Monitoring. It's not very big, but it talks about putting the JavaScript into your code. And there's examples in CFML. There's a ColdFusion example right there. You just put this set of code in your template, probably like in your application CFM or CFC would be a typical place to put it, and that'll put this tracking script on every page that'll get sent down to the browser, and it'll come back to the server and tell how long was spent doing that stuff. So that's user experience monitoring. I'll say again, if you come back to the FusionReactor website, you can find out about all the features. There's a mobile app for viewing things. I didn't mention it, but there's an enterprise dashboard. You can watch multiple servers at once. Let me just do that real quick. I'll come to my FusionReactor dashboard. I happen to have it in called my Fram instance. I won't discuss the distinction about that for now. But if I go to my Fram instance and its enterprise dashboard, I have it set to watch multiple machines. I thought I had a, oh no, sorry, I looked at the wrong ones. Sorry, I meant to look at the one on my local machine. There you go. So here's my enterprise dashboard on my local machine, and when I look at the dashboard, I've got it set up to watch many different servers, my CF10 servers, my local servers, my Arehart.org server, even the FusionReactor Live demo. So this is a single dashboard that lets me see multiple machines running at once, and I can see them individually or I can group them. So I've created a group of my CF10 servers, a group of my local machines, and if a particular server is offline, like this particular server wasn't online, so when I first would have added it, it would have given me this error saying it couldn't connect because it's not online right now. I have that instance of CF9 stopped. Well, I don't have to suffer it turning red all the time. I can just say, no, stop paying attention to him. He's offline. But anyway, so this one was running, and when I click on an instance, I can see pretty much the same stuff that was in the metrics web metrics page, but I see it on a single high-level page. And this is memory, CPU request, and database activity. And as those goes up, these pipes go up. And the blue turns orange or red as things get worse. And this one is red because it's got that long-running database query. And it's almost finished, so at a moment we'll see that pipe go down. It'll momentarily turn blue, but then it'll slowly turn orange because the database, we know that query takes 60 seconds. So anyway, if I click on it, we can see that activity going on down here. So that's the FusionReactor Enterprise dashboard. Really powerful way to watch multiple servers at once. So I meant to really just say, there's a lot more you could learn about. Come back and visit the website, see the features pages, read the blog, watch the videos. There's video tutorials. If I go to support, there's video tutorials here. And I always showed you the docs. Great stuff.